Welcome, Homo. Thank you for being here. We are August 19th, 2026, Wednesday. Said it briefly yesterday, just to reiterate the quick point. Obviously, we're not going to be on tomorrow because this is the third week of the month, and I am on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, not the Thursday. My Veterans Day meeting is tomorrow. So tonight, one of the first times, I've got a couple things, and including a bit of information, I just saw like literally a few minutes ago. We'll get to that in a second. But very few times, if you've watched for enough and seen enough of Supermax Nation, our stream, I don't always, like in the course of 2 nights a week, I try as much as possible to cover or expand into more than just, say, one item, one topic, 2 topics, et cetera. Even though, like I've said before, as we shrink and synthesize or slim down the amount of time that we run our show on, for at a single time, at a single instance on a Tuesday or Thursday, we're paring down from 2, 3, 4 items to 1 to maybe 3 at most items. More the case now. Lately, it's been about 1 or 2 items. We cover them aggressively and in detail and hard so that they really stick and they're ingrained in your thought and you remember them after the show is done. If you try to do a million things, it's hard to remember all of them, right? Or to really dig in and understand them comprehensively. That's harder. But if it's 1 or 2 items, 2 or 3 items at most, then yes, we have the ability in an amount of time, in the 40, 45 range, 50-minute range, to really get into, the detail and the meat of whatever that topic or subject is. So having said that, my point tonight is that I normally do not do a single item or a topic or 2 for Tuesday and the Thursday, or in this case, Tuesday and the Wednesday, both of the shows during the week. I try to stay away from that because there's a lot else that goes on. And I've said before, I don't want to get stuck in or just do, the news of the day in terms of a cycle or a method for us as a show. I like including other things. I want to include or to show or to elucidate, to instruct, to help educate you on a lot of things that go on in life, that a lot of things that are out there for you to formulaically not just be one thing in what you do. Because I'm going to say this, a lot of the reason the Trump cult is the way they are is because they're literally having this stuff fed to them on a 24/7 news cycle, constantly over and over again, the same stuff over and over again, to the point where they don't believe anything else. They're not exposed to anything else. They don't have the ability intellectually, cognitively, inquisitively to be able to even know that if something's not being fed to them or something's being fed to them in that stream, they can't tell the difference between what is fact or fiction. They don't know if it's true or not. They just accept it. And they just believe it out of hand because they got it from Fox News or wherever hell, right-wing nutsack, person on YouTube or some other platform says. And I don't want us to be that. I don't want this country to be that. I don't want our people to be that. I don't want people watching our show to do that, be that. So I normally do not do an item more than once or on multiple shows in a row. Having said all that, tonight, in a way, we will. And it's to follow up on our conversation and our show from last night, which went back and watched last night. I was pretty happy with overall, because there are things that I said or spoke to yesterday that the average civilian, the average American, maybe doesn't know if they've not worn the uniform or haven't served, and that they need to know and they need to understand, they need to question, they need to want to know more about what men and women in uniform that choose to raise their hand and swear an oath to this country and its Constitution. I really do enjoy that part. I love that part. I enjoyed my time as a U.S. history teacher because of that. I did. I absolutely did. I love teaching U.S. history because I was teaching young people about this country and the things that are good about it. The United States has a lot of bad shit too, but there are things about this country that are awesome, that are incredible, that are good, that are better than any other country the world has ever seen, that humanity has ever seen, that we have ever constructed or created as a people, as a species. And so I love that. I love doing that. And so I enjoyed what we did last night. I enjoyed talking about, again, an ugly topic, an ugly subject, the U.S.S. Lincoln and the deployment that has gone on or had gone on for way too long, way beyond what it should have been. That's clear. That's evident. That's not even debatable. Even Trump cult members don't even argue that point. They're being quiet about it. If anything, they're just trying to take shots at sailors. And I saw one online in a Facebook group that I'm in that is a conservative group, and they were making fun of the sailors for being too weak or crying about their deployment. Basically, they were saying, if you signed up, you don't have a right to bitch and complain. And in essence, I've kind of said that too. Technically, you kind of don't. You lose your freedom of speech once you swear an oath to the Constitution and choose to serve this country. You do. Okay. I stop there when it gets into taking shots at or belittling or diminishing our people, our young people in uniform. That's a no-go, especially from people that are not in uniform or haven't worn the damn uniform. Making fun of them, taking shots at them, calling them crybabies and whiny and candy and all that other shit. That I have a problem with. And you don't have to have been a serviceman member or to have worn the uniform like I did to also not to have a problem with that. If you're an American, you should have a problem with that. Putting people in difficult position, putting people in difficult circumstances, treating them poorly, abusively in some cases, to the border of it. Every American should have a problem with that, and you don't have to wear a uniform to do that. You should have a problem with it. So long story short to this, and I'm going to stop here for 1 second. We're going to dig back in because I spent literally all last night after I finished the show, went home, read, watched some material from other parts of the world, watched other countries and how they're covering the U.S.S. Lincoln and our issues, and we'll call them issues right now, when it comes to our service deployment and our force posture in that region, in the Middle East, CENTCOM, Central Command. So we're going to speak to that again to follow up on last night's show. And that'll be the bulk of the show tonight. But before I begin, I don't do this often. I don't do it on the show. Listen, people die. There is death all the time, literally, all around, everybody. But I just got this literally 10 minutes ago as we got into the studio and I was getting my laptop set up for the show tonight. And on a Facebook post, I'll say a young lady, she's not like super young, but her name is Donna Schieffer. Donna Schieffer. She was my daughter's science teacher, and she just passed from. I want to say cancer. There wasn't much more in the post about it, but I knew she had some issues or had a bout with cancer, and I think she went into remission. But then she was out again. She stopped teaching for a while, and then then it came back. And listen, I mean, there are. It's almost impossible for someone to not know someone that has had cancer, dealt with cancer, or died from cancer. You know, it's literally part of our daily lives. I mean, really. And so it's take it in some. I'm bringing it to point because I happen to know her, not like, hangout friend or partner. I knew her as a parent. From my perspective to her as an instructor. And then me being a former high school teacher myself, I had a monster respect for her for how she conducted herself, how she approached the profession, how she was with kids, my daughter and others included. She was respected by not just parents, but by students. That's hard to do in today's high school setting. It's almost like uniformly now, like if the kids like you, it's probably because you're like letting them get away with murder, or they dislike you because you're not. And there's like literally not much in between. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get my point. But she was universally, universally loved and respected by both students, parents, and her colleagues, and the community, our community, those that definitely knew about her or knew her in her role as a high school science teacher at Central High School, and then for the last few years up until now, Justin Garza High School in Central Unified School District. So not doing too much here. I'm literally doing. I want to mention her name because she was my daughter's teacher, and I think I'll leave it here. She was a good person, and again, I wasn't like, my wife and I weren't like her best friends. We didn't hang out. My wife knew her better than I do, being in the teaching union, et cetera. But let's just say, like, and I'll leave it there. I have, continue, and will always have a massive respect for her approach to the profession of instructing young minds. She was A-list, top tier, one of the best I ever saw, one of the best I've seen, one of the best I've been around. And I've been around education a long time. But she was that good, beyond. She was that good. So nothing but love for Donna Schiefer. You will be remembered. You'll be missed. And from this humble opinion, you are respected in everything that you did in your life as an instructor. Nothing but love for you. Okay, let's get down to business here. So the time that I spent last night after I came back, after I finished the show last night and I went home and kind of like dug in, there were some things that if you watched the show last night, I said that I wasn't 100% sure about with regard to like all the particulars, but I wanted to address it because it has gone more than a few weeks and I didn't say anything about it, didn't comment about it. For the rule of thumb, at least for me, I'm not going to comment on every single thing that runs across the ticker along the bottom of a screen on a news cycle. I think there's too much of that, to be honest with you. I do. People feel like they have to comment about everything. Sometimes you just need to shut the hell up. We have a president that comments on everything. I'd prefer he just shut the hell up and do his damn job. Okay? That's what I would prefer. And I'm kind of that way with anybody in general. You don't have to comment on everything. Nobody's an expert on anything. Sometimes it's best to just shut up and watch, listen, learn, and pay some respect or attention without running your mouth about something that you probably do not know or cannot know, right? So I don't. But the U.S.S. Lincoln, as it is gone, and as I've watched over the last few weeks, how this is mushroomed into something else. Now, let's be clear. It's mushroomed into something else because there is smoke there. And, people want to know if there's fire, right? If there's smoke, there's fire. I think that at this point, it's clear to me that there is fire from this smoke that has gone up over the last handful of weeks. And so it brings me to the point where I do need to comment about it because I definitely see other things here beyond just, we have some sailors that might jump off because they don't want to be on the ship anymore. Oh, the conditions are abysmal, horrid, and subhuman, well beyond what we should be accustomed to in terms of how we treat our troops, our soldiers, our sailors, men and women in uniform, etc. That's the obvious. That's the simple. But if you watched last night's show, and if you haven't, I advise you to go do so because it's instructive. It's about 45 minutes, but we get into some of the meat and potatoes of what the issues are and how they can be worse or more, and what they're indicating, what the problems are. I think my comment was faith and trust in service. Part of the title of last night's show. Servicemen and women, people who swear an oath to this country and this Constitution. It is important. It is /vital. It is essential to being a great force, to being a great military, we have to have faith and trust in our mission, if not our leadership, and in our country. We have to. If we don't believe, and again, I advise you to watch last night's show because I was heavy on this. If we don't believe in what we're doing, if we don't believe in the mission, the operation, then we're not going to do it well, or it's not going to be good. Meaning it's going to be substandard. It's going to be less than. It's not going to be as good as it should be, could be. And when you're talking about militaries, we're talking about lives. Men and women can die if something doesn't go well, or something's wrong, or someone doesn't do their job adequately. If someone's really not dialed in because they don't give a shit about this mission or doesn't believe in it. So there are larger issues, and that's why I wanted to address it, and that's why I made the point last night to say it's time to talk about the U.S.S. Lincoln, because there are larger issues than this ship, this one ship. And it is clear now, after a lot of reading and research and studying and learning about this item in particular, the U.S.S. Lincoln, and the issues that have arisen from it, it is clear to me that it is much, much bigger systemically in our military and in our leadership, in our governance. No question. No question. And so much so that it prompts me to actually come back to it a night later. And as I stated at the top of the show, I don't normally do that. I try to get into more than a few topics that are current and that we are looking at as a country and as a people that are important to us. But suffice to say that I felt it necessary and important that I come back and we hammer this home one more time before we go off into the weekend, because as per our usual, at least our normal, when we leave on the Thursday, I tell you all, those of you that watch my show, to pay attention, have a discriminating eye and a discriminating ear. Don't fall for bullshit or garbage or things that are lies or hyperbole or excessive and that may not be true or kind of skirt the truth. You need to have a prepared mind so that you can deduce fact from fiction, so you can separate the wheat from the chaff, so you can make a good decision based on what you know to be objectively true as opposed to subjectively false. So we're going to touch on the Lincoln one more time, finalize or firm up some of the things we said last night. One of those things to start with, it wasn't 280. I think I said 280 last night. I think it was 268 is what I heard or what I read last night into today. 268 days. So obviously still a hell of a long time, nearly 9 months of deployment, more than it needed to be in terms of the length of time that those sailors and that crew was on that ship in deployment into the region, into a war zone, a war theater. So I think what I'm going to do to start, because there are some things that to the layman, to the average American, sound foreign or alien, or you don't entirely understand or know the meaning of or how it's applied in the context to which something is said, a word or a term or a meaning or something important to the topic we're talking about, and then someone spits this word out and you're not sure what it means. You kind of knew, but you don't. Then you find out that specifically with military, those things mean a hell of a lot more and are more direct. And that's kind of the case here. So I'm going to give you this. And you've probably heard it if you're paying attention to this and watching shows, etc. You're hearing a lot about logistics. 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 So here's the definition. Logistics, and this is literally the dictionary definition. Logistics is the practical process of planning, moving, and storing goods, services, and information from where they start to where people use them. It helps make sure that items get to the right place at the right time in a safe way. So Again, logistics is a word for common. It isn't specific to our military. However, when the word logistics is applied to military, it can become much more specific because of the application of the word in military terms. Okay? And that happens a lot for a lot of other words too, by the way. So I'm going to say it. I'm going to read it to you one more time. Logistics. And as I'm reading to you, I want you to begin putting on your Supermex Nation thinking Mexican, thinking American hat and start to apply this as I'm reading it to you to what we're talking about today, which is the U.S.S. Lincoln and the United States Navy and our military as a whole. Logistics is the practical process of planning, moving, and storing goods, services, and information from where they start to where people use them. Okay, and so if we just take this in this isolated setting and we apply this word to the U.S.S. Lincoln, okay? Planning, moving, and storing goods, services, and information from a place to the U.S.S. Lincoln, because as we covered last night and we spoke to last night, there was a supply issue, a logistic issue. Soldiers, or excuse me, I apologize, I'm a soldier and I usually start with that, but again, sailors and Marines on that vessel were deficient in supplies and food, hygiene materials. They did not have what they needed, okay? And that's why this thing is blown into something more for adequate reasons, because it should be. So then the question is, why were they not resupplied? Why did they not have the logistics necessary to conduct their mission without a sailor or other sailors, for all we know? Again, and there's speculation here, and I'm letting you know that. I don't know that 100%. Again, I do believe it is all going to come out. We will know everything, trust me. But what was it about the planning, moving, and storing goods, services, and information to the U.S.S. Lincoln? Where were the supplies and resupplies supposed to come from, and how was it supposed to get to the U.S.S. Lincoln? So let's encapsulate that and make it logistics the word. Food, okay, clearly. Food and nutrition, which I spoke to last night. Food and nutrition. And hygiene materials, toothpaste, toothbrush, shampoo, soap, feminine hygiene products in particular, specifically for women. How did these things not get to, and where were they supposed to come from for the men and women that were on, for the people that are on, the servicemen and women that are on the U.S.S. Lincoln? I gave you logistics. How is it applied? And in context to the U.S.S. Lincoln, what happened, or why didn't it happen, and where was it supposed to come from? Where were they supposed to come from? So this is what I dug into and I read last night. The Naval Support Activity Base, Bahrain. Bahrain is a small country in the region that we are allied with, and that we specifically have, the United States has a base, a naval base at this particular location in Bahrain. Look it up if you need to. Bahrain, again, a small Middle Eastern country that we are allied with and that we have a base at. And it is this base in particular, and for the record, that was the name. That's the name of the acronym, but the name of the base is Naval Support Activity Bahrain. NAS something, like a shorthand acronym. Anyway, so this Naval Support Activity Base in Bahrain is our principal location for storage of goods, items, equipment, maintenance items, and food, and health and welfare items. It's this base in Bahrain that is normally or should be the base that supplies or resupplies our naval vessels on deployment in that region, in the Gulf, okay, in the Persian Gulf. So why am I bringing this up to you? Because that naval support activity base in Bahrain was hit and knocked completely out of commission on the first day of this Trumpstein war. So let me make sure I'm 100% clear and that this goes rock solid into your mind, into your thought, into your data banks, into your knowledge base. The principal base that was responsible for supplying and resupplying our vessels in the region was knocked out on the first day of the war by Iranian attack, missiles, etc. It was knocked out. And so what does that mean? So this is what as I was watching, reading last night, I've got my notes here. For those of you guys that don't know, and I think most of you do, I don't even like using the term old school. I think that's dumb. Old school. Whoever came up with that term old school probably never had an idea that people would obliterate the hell out of the use of it in so many ways. Anyway, at least in this application. So I'm old school in the sense that I like writing, and I like writing on paper in a clipboard in a notepad. All right. So I don't do it all on my phone. Don't do it on my device. I literally only use my device for the most part, almost entirely just to make phone calls. I don't like doing all the other stuff on it. I don't like, all the apps, and I do not do that. Anyway, when it comes to notes and note taking and all of that, I write, and I got to have my notepad. I've got to have my clipboard. So I wrote this as I was watching and reading last night, all the material with regard to this particular naval support activity base in Bahrain. And my first immediate thought, and stay with me, hold with me here, as I'm telling you that it got knocked out the first day. Okay, we attacked, reminder from last night and a whole bunch of other shows prior, as Marco Rubio said, we attacked Iran because they were going to attack Israel. One of the most stunningly stupid, insidious rationale for war I've heard from the United States ever. For us anyway. There's other stupid people that done things stupidly in terms of war in other countries and other places throughout history. But for us, this one's right up there with like the stupidest all time. We attacked Iran because they were going to attack Israel. But this was my first thought as I was reading and taking and digesting all this information last night. As a former serviceman and as a man that was in uniform at one point, my first thought was, you're telling me that our principal base of resupply for our fleet in that region and our soldiers and troops in that region was knocked out on the first day after we attacked. I'm not shocked that it was hit and knocked out. What shocks me and what is astounding to me now is that we did not know that. And as I say that, I have a hard time saying that. No one, it's gonna be a hard road to hoe to convince me personally that our commanders and our upper brass, CENTCOM commander, even years ago, if not just today, I'm going to have a hard time believing that they were not aware, did not understand, or weren't made aware and did not know of what would happen as a result of our attack. What would the corresponding attack be from Iran? And for those of you that are good, you've been paying attention, you've been watching my show or other good shows, you're sitting here saying, hold on a minute. Supermex is talking about this naval support activity base in Bahrain getting hit, and shouldn't our upper brass have seen that or known that in advance? The answer is a resounding yes. And if you're really good, if you really pay attention, you're not part of the MAGA cult. You're also saying to yourself or asking yourself the question that is logically moved to immediately as I say that, well, isn't that kind of like if we hit Iran, they're going to close off the Strait of Hormuz as a corresponding response to our attack on them? And the answer, again, is a resounding yes. Yes, absolutely. You attack a country and you expect them not to respond. You attack a country and expect them to what? Roll over and say, hey, you win, we're done? Do whatever you want? No. I know our commanders knew in advance, going back years, because that is what the United States military is exceptional at, and if not the best on the planet, one of the best on the planet, contingencies and military repercussion and response. If we attack country A, then we can expect item A plus A1, A2, A3 because we attack that country. If we attack Iran, and this has all been done, by the way, I think most of you guys probably already know this if you're watching the show, you do know that it was said in advance that if we attacked Iran in any way, in any capacity, and constructed war on them, then logically they would close off, or we would have issues with the Strait of Hormuz and people or countries and vessels flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, and it would disrupt the global economy because roughly 20%, 1/5 of the world's energy economy runs through the Strait of Hormuz. You can't remove 1/5 of the world's economy and expect not to suffer or take a hit somewhere. So again, we understood that. Well, I'll say we, generically, we all, the country, its military leadership, et cetera. We all knew that. We all know that was going to happen. I'm going to add in this particular here, this supply base, this friendly, secure base in Bahrain was the principal supplier and resupplier of our vessels and our fleet in the region. And we, generically, you, I, American people, our upper brass, our admirals and generals, they know that too. No one's going to convince me, again, hard road to hoe here. No one's going to convince me that they didn't know that. That as a corresponding response to our attack, that this base would get hit too. They had to have known it. They had to have planned it out because that is what the United States military does exceptionally better than just about everybody on the planet as a country or as a people, as a force. And lo and behold, that is exactly what happened. We hit them and they responded. And they took out either entirely or in large part this naval supply base to where it no longer functioned or is not functional or manned by, I think one of the terms was a skeleton crew. They just have some people there, but there's nothing going on, no activity. You can't come in, it's not safe. You can't resupply, it's not safe, etc. So it's knocked out for all intents and purposes with regard to our resupply of our troops and our units. So that was done. Now I want you to scale back for 1 second and stay with me. This is a tough one, by the way, for tonight's show. It's tough because you really have to think and like expand out of yourself. Is it logical to say it is that if we attacked Iran, they would respond and there are things that they would do to hit us back or hurt us or harm us in some way? Okay, so we know the obvious ones. We've stipulated them, stated them right now. One, the Strait of Hormuz. That's still ongoing. That's still going on. We don't control the Strait of Hormuz. And I will say to a degree, Iran can't say they control the Strait of Hormuz, but they don't have to. They just need to cause us problems. They just need to take a shot at a ship once in a while that isn't a friend of theirs. So the onus, the burden is on us to keep that shipping lane clear. And it's a hell of a lot harder to hold and defend that strait than it is to just take shots at an attack. You get it? It's a lot harder to defend it than it is to just take shots and attack it, because that's what Iran gets to do. They don't even have to control it. They just need to make sure that we can't control it. And it's a lesser burden of control for them, easier, in other words, because they have a lesser military. They don't have what our capability is. That's fine. But they don't have to. So that's the one for sure. That's obvious. We all know that. We can see it. It's still ongoing today. It's in evidence for everybody to understand. The second one that I just brought up, and I'm getting to my larger point here in a second. The second one is this naval support activity base in Bahrain that was hit the first night and wiped out, or at least decommissioned to the point where it's it's useless to us. We can't go there and resupply. It's not safe. They don't have what we need. They don't have the supplies necessary for our ships. In large measure, and the whole point to all of it is that the U.S.S. Lincoln could not resupply. And the only way they could have resupplied was to have left the theater of combat hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away. They would have to have left. So a decision was made, clearly obvious to me, okay, that after those things were done, and for the record, I'm not going to go into this. This is a wormhole and probably a good one, maybe for another time, but most Americans do not know right now to what extent all of our bases and all of our military personnel in the region have been hit. We don't know. I don't know. You don't know. Clearly, more than a few places were hit by the Iranians on the first night and subsequent nights up until today. We don't know. I would guess that there are injuries and maybe death that we don't know about yet, that over this last 100 and whatever the hell days it is now have taken place. But clearly, more than a few places and locations and bases were hit by Iranians or Iranian-backed support. That's clear. And as always, I'll say to you, because there's a lag here, a lag in time of reporting and us finding out the information or deducing what we can from what we do have in front of us in evidence. There are other bases that have been hit and that are probably out of action or out of commission. And we don't know them all. Meaning you and I, not we, this country, because our government probably does, our military does, but we do not. And that's a problem. Okay, so let me leave that because that's a separate wormhole. We can go down a rabbit hole. We can go down that, and because I kind of do want to know. I do want to know, where did they hit us? How much? How often? How many people were injured or killed in places outside of Iran, in bases throughout the Middle East that we are embedded in other countries, allied countries? I want to know. If for nothing else, you should be concerned because those are American lives at stake, by the way. Our young men and women that are in uniform, that are in those locations, that have been attacked, that have been hit. I want to know that for that reason alone. But even if you're hard-hearted and you don't give a shit about our men and women in uniform, that's also our tax dollar and how we're spending it. Those bases are not free. There is cost, and we pay that cost. So if there are bases in the Middle East, locations, outposts, et cetera, that have been hit by Iran or Iranian-backed support, other people, other countries, et cetera, then I want to know, how are you spending my money and where is that money now? What base was taken out? Is it no longer in operation? Are we spending money to resupply it? Are we spending money to rebuild it? I think we need to know. I don't think that's a stretch. Hell, you could even be in the cult and agree with me on that. Don't you think we should know where the damn money's going? Oh, well, maybe not. Maybe if you're in the MAGA cult, you don't care. Because you also don't care that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files 38,000 times. So why would you care if one of our bases in the Middle East got hit and we don't know about it? Foolish me. Supermax, what are you thinking? Come on now. Anyway, moving forward. This is the larger question to ask, and it goes and it syncs up with last night's show. This is the larger question for you, my member, my Supermax Nation member. And it's real simple. If the U.S.S. Lincoln and the problems that have arisen from the lack of supply or resupply to that vessel, that has resulted in a hit to morale, a hit to the faith and trust of our servicemen and women in the region, if not uniformly across the board in terms of our military, if not our people. I don't have faith and trust in this government to conduct war adequately. Notice I said government, didn't say the military. I trust our men and women in uniform at the base, yes. I trust our men and women in the upper admin and administrative ranks going up to our colonels, generals, commanders at those levels. I trust those people to do their job. But where I lose faith and trust is after that, when it becomes the civilian component of a defense secretary and a president. And here's where I'm going to tie it all together for you so that you understand clearly what this is, what this mess is. I have no doubt in my mind, as I stipulated a little bit earlier, I have no doubt in my mind that our commanders, our admirals, our flag and general officers, admirals, generals, etc. I know they know. I know that they understood the response pattern or the likely responses military on the part of Iran if we attacked them. I know they know that. They game this out. They plan for everything. And I know they knew because that's already been made of. The Strait of Hormuz, we knew that. But what about this base that was supposed to resupply the Lincoln and the other vessels in the region? I know they knew that too. I know they knew that too. So then lastly, your logical question should be, as a civilian, as a person, as an American, if our commanders knew these things, then how did these things still happen? If we know those things were going to happen, if we knew they would screw with and play games with and try to own and cause havoc in the Strait of Hormuz, if we knew that, then how did it happen anyway? If we knew, if our commanders, I say we, our commanders in general, if we, our commanders in our military upper brass knew that a location like the Naval Support Activity Base in Bahrain would be hit if we attacked Iran, if we knew that, then how did it happen anyway? And then now you ask yourself the question, if we knew all these things, then how did it happen? And the answer is it's actually really, really simple. You know it's going to happen, and you know that you can't stop it because it's going to happen. There's only actually one way to stop what happened to the Naval Support Activity Base in Bahrain that was responsible principally for resupplying the U.S.S. Lincoln, which led to the damage and the media firestorm frenzy that is current with the U.S.S. Lincoln after their 268, I think the number was 264, 268. 264, I'll go with the lower number so it doesn't exaggerate, but 264-day deployment. We knew this was going to happen. It happened anyway. Why? And here's the last point for tonight's show as we finish up. I'm going to guess, and I don't know. So clearly I was not in the room. But I'm going to guess that our commanders told, briefed, gave the information and the intelligence on the likely outcome if we attacked Iran. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary, these are the outcomes that are not just likely, but probable if we attack Iran. Strait of Hormuz will be closed or have issue with traffic and commerce through it. The Naval Support Activity Base in Bahrain will get hit. Other locations, I don't even know. Other locations will get hit because it is part of the pattern that will be the response of the Iranian military and the Iranian government. These things will happen, Mr. President, Mr. Secretary. And here's your final thought for the night. Mr. President and Mr. Secretary Pete Hegseth, were most likely, and I'm 99% sure, they were told in some form or fashion by our military, our commanders, our combatant commanders in the region, in CENTCOM, our naval commanders. If you do these things, this is what's going to happen to our bases and our people if you attack Iran. That is their job. They have to do that. And I know they did their job. I trust them to do their job more than I trust Pete Hegseth or Donald Trump. I'd bet my life on that, as a matter of fact. Now, I'd bet my life on that as a matter of fact, and as a matter of course, I would bet my life on that fact. I know they were told. I know they were informed. I know they were briefed. And ladies and gentlemen of America, ladies and gentlemen of Supermax Nation, the show for the thinking Mexican, the show for the thinking American, they did it anyway. They attacked Iran anyway. So as I've been saying to you for a number of weeks now, and all of this is beginning to come out more and more, there's going to be more. There will be more. Just quickly, one of the destroyers that was part of the strike group, strike fleet, with the U.S.S. Lincoln, the U.S.S. Benfold. I just saw this a few days ago. The U.S.S. Benfold suffered a power outage for 4 days. That's crazy. 4 days on a destroyer, a power outage. We are beginning to see, unravel, unfold, and pull back layers here that are beginning to show systemic failure, systemic incompetence on the part of our leadership at the top. If you put our people in difficult circumstances, they cannot last forever and they cannot be good forever. Donald Trump has put our military in one of the worst positions I've ever seen in my lifetime when it comes to stress, pressure, overextension, commitment to too many issues, items. It is stressing our force. It is stressing our force in ways that it hasn't in a long time. And not because we're fighting 50 different opponents on 50 different battlefields, but quite literally through stupidity and incompetence resulting in systemic failure that is beginning to pop up in a lot of ways. There will be more. I'm confident and positive there will be more. We're going to see more. These things are adding up. They're going to continue to add up. And definitely so long as we're in this war, by the way. They're stretching us and extending us beyond what we should be doing to our people, to our men and women in uniform. And I'll finish here and leave it on that last point from a little bit earlier. They knew these things would happen. They know there are other things that are going to happen. And I'm going to leave you with that thought for the night. Ladies and gentlemen, they did it anyway. They did it anyway. Because they don't give a shit about our men and women in uniform. They don't give a shit about our military. They don't give a damn about our economy, by the way. Because our economy has suffered because of this war. It's worse than it's ever been. Costs, inflation, etc. Belief and trust in our system. That's all done. That's all gone. But I want you to remember that from this show tonight. They knew this stuff would happen. They knew our people would suffer. They knew that there would be lack of supplies, food, nutrition, hygiene items, power outages. They knew. And they did it anyway. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, the most incompetent and stupid commander-in-chief and secretary of defense in our nation's history. And there'll be more evidence to prove and bear me out over time. Extremely confident on that. Pay attention to this. Watch as more comes as I've brought this to you. Pay attention. Watch. Learn. You'll see more coming. And now you can sniff it out before it gets to you in the stench. We've done a disservice to our men and women in uniform. We're doing a disservice to our country. The most incompetent and stupid commander-in-chief and secretary of defense in the history of the United States. Be back next week. Nothing but love for you. Regular Tuesday and Thursday. Enjoy your weekend. Go out, smell the roses, do something else. Get your mind off garbage and have a good time. Spend time with your family and your friends and your animals. If you got pets, because they love you unconditionally. Nothing but love for you. I'll see you next week.